Hi guys, Robbie here and welcome to video number 28 for the series of tutorial videos on the Canon 500D, T1i and KissX3. In this video we're going to have a look at picture styles and the effect that they have on your images. Okay, so here we are, we're going to have a look at the picture styles and the effects that they have. As you can see, we've got the 500D T1i and KissX3 here on a tripod. Okay, the reason why I'm on a tripod is the exposure is quite long, quite a slow shutter speed. So I'm on a tripod to prevent any kind of camera shake. I'm using a cable release to trigger the camera. Don't have to use one of these, you can use the 2 or 10 second timer. That's up to you, although if you have got a cable release, it's a good handy little tool to have because it will prevent you rocking the camera and it needing to settle before you can shoot. Now the setup here, we have the kit lens on the 500D. I've also got image stabilization off on the tripod. You don't want that on when you're on a tripod. We have the still life set here that you can see. We have two ducks, a white duck and a black duck. These are from the What the Duck online comic, which is a photography based comic. I suggest you go and have a look at that. A red stapler, blue torch and some flowers as well. So a fairly good range of colours, and that's what we're going to be looking at as we change the picture styles. Okay, more on that in a moment. Now my camera settings at the moment, exposure settings, don't worry about those, are going to be different for different scenarios. But at the moment I'm on ISO 400, f6.3 at a 40th of a second. I'm in manual for a consistent exposure. The light for these shots are being provided by video lights that you can't see out of frame at the moment, so they are a constant light source. Okay, I'm not using flash on this at the moment. My white balance is set for sunny or daylight because it's the closest white balance for these lights that we are using to get accurate colour. So at least we are getting consistent exposure, consistent white balance. So the only thing that will have an effect on the image is the picture styles as we change them. And what I want you to look at in these shots that will be coming up is the change in colour saturation, contrast as well. You can look at the reds, the blues, greens and the oranges in here, and you'll see some of them look a little bit more punchy, some a little bit more less so with certain picture styles. And of course, obviously when it comes to black and white, we get black and white as well. So we'll take the first shot now on our standard picture style. So I'm just going to set that quickly. I'll show you a quick clip on how to change the picture style in picture. So on standard picture style, we'll take the first shot. I'll show these full screen and we'll run through each picture style to see what effect that it has. Okay, so we'll have a quick look at how we go about changing the picture styles on the 500D T1i KissX3. Just a quick reminder, we have a button just below the set button here, which I call the quick control dial or the D-pad on the camera, and we press this bottom one here, which looks like a little, I don't know, some kind of a star thing, and that will bring up the picture style menu, and then we can use the left and right D-pad buttons here to select which picture style we want. We can also use the front roller dial, you'll hear that clicking there, to select the picture style we want to work with as well. And then once you've moved picture styles, we press set to confirm it, and that will have now switched the picture style. Now if we go back into that menu, you will see here that we have the standard picture styles listed. Okay, so you have, I'll just go back, actually we've got standard, portrait, landscape, neutral, faithful, monochrome, and user defined one. You can do custom picture styles using the software which came with your camera. I have one created here, 500D flat video, which is just a flat picture style for doing video with the camera. And generally these user defined ones are just set to exactly like the standard picture style that you have on the camera. So you will just see it saying standard with all the same contrast and sharpness settings, unless you have set a custom one. So bear in mind, or just bear that in mind. Now we can also change picture styles as well by going into menu, going to the second red tab, and it's at the bottom, just one up, picture style there, and you will also see the current settings which are set for the picture styles based on the contrast, sharpness, saturation and so forth in with those, and you can see my custom one there has just got the name against it. So that's another way that you can set the picture style. So we'll run through these now, okay, and show you what each picture style looks like, and you can see the changes in that colour, contrast and the vibrance as we run through them. Okay guys, welcome to the second part of the video 28, looking at the picture styles for the Canon 500D, T1i and KissX3. Sorry for the switch out in the audio, I'm using a different microphone here recording the screencast and I'm full of a cold. But nevertheless we'll carry on. First picture style we're going to have a look at is the standard one. We're going to have a look at these in Canon's Digital Photo Professional, so it's consistent throughout. It's the software that majority of you will probably start with, and these have been shot in camera, straight up JPEGs, and no processing has been done. We're not shot raw at all here. So first up we'll have a look at the standard picture style. There we go, and we can see here, we'll blow this up to full screen. There we go, the standard picture style, so we can see the kind of contrast and colour and saturation that we get with this style. It's really popped the orange of that flower there. Now that might well be too much really, to be honest with you. It looks a little bit overcooked, although it's kind of hard to expect one picture style to kind of cover all bases really. And we can see the kind of representation of this scene that we've got. One thing to note about this scene in terms of exposure, I've locked this down into manual exposure, so that's not going to shift. What you're going to see as we go through each of these picture styles is saturation, vibrance and contrast change. Now that will give you a perceived change in exposure value, so you may see little white areas of the white what the duck get a little brighter. Okay, you may see a little bit of the blacks get more crushed on the black what the duck in the shadows as well. And that's one thing that you're not really going to get absolutely bang on right in camera, is when you've got a scene where you've got both extremes. You've got white highlights or white subjects and black dark subjects. You've kind of got to expose for in the middle, and you're going to have to do some post-production work on it to get true blacks and get true whites within the image. You know, there's not enough dynamic range for the cameras to record that. They don't see what our eyes see. Okay, so this is the standard picture style. We'll go to the next one now, and I'll put the standard picture style up against the others as we go through. So I'll leave that fella there. That's the standard picture style. Oops, drop that down a bit. There we go. And the next one in the sequence is the portrait picture style. So we'll have a look at portrait picture style here. We can see as we compare these two picture styles, the change in the colour, certainly from the standard picture style here to the orange flower. On the portrait one it's a little bit flatter. The portrait one will favour skin tones more so than the standard one will. And you can see a slight change in the blue and the reds. I mean, reds, yellows and oranges are a big part of skin tones generally, and that's where you're going to see the change. So we'll have a quick look at the portrait picture style on full screen there, just so you can see. There we go. And then we'll go back just quickly to the standard picture style. So there's quite a difference. Now what I'll do with these images is I will stick them side by side and as I go through, but I'll also upload these files to Flickr for you, so you can go and have a look at your convenience as well. I'll stick a link to the sets below. Now the next one in the sequence is we're a 4407 landscape. So we'll bring up the standard picture style. It's a bit clunky how you deal with multiple windows in this software. There we go. And we'll come to landscape. There we go. So this is the landscape picture style. Now one thing I've noticed with this one is blue has got a lot more punch to it. You can see that in the torch here. Reds, not really that accurate really, although reds generally in a landscape aren't really too important, because landscapes will probably have more blue tones, green tones, possibly some yellows within there, more than they may well on the reds. But you can see the green foliage here, or the green stems and flowers. They look pretty accurate. This flower looks a little bit overcooked, possibly a little bit bright as a result in the change in this picture style. Remember, it's switching saturation, vibrance and contrast. So now we'll stick this landscape picture style next to the standard picture style, and you can see quite a difference really. The yellow's got a little bit more punch in the standard picture style than the landscape one has. Okay, as has the red there, but when you go to the blue pops more in the landscape style than it does in the standard. That's quite interesting. So we'll close that one and we'll go to the next one in the sequence, which is neutral. So there we go, neutral picture style, so we'll bring that up full screen. There we go, so this is neutral, supposed to be non-biased towards anything really, and this is how the camera has represented the scene in neutral. The red quite punchy, blue maybe not so much, it's a little bit flatter than the other two. The orange flower probably looks a little bit better than the other two. They probably had a little bit too much punch in there, but this is the neutral picture style, so we'll take that down now and have a look at that side by side to the standard one. Now, which you prefer, it's up to you really. As you all know, I use the standard picture style on my camera all the time. The reason is I shoot RAW, so I can change saturation, vibrance and contrast later on as I work on the RAW files. But the standard picture styles I found gave me a good ballpark to start in. Gives me a rough idea when I look at the back of the camera what the final image will look like once I've worked on it. Obviously, if it's going to be black and white once I've worked on it, then no, it doesn't show that, but I would switch to the black and white picture style, but it just gives me a good general idea. There we go, so we'll close that one now. So we have standard and neutral. Now we'll go to faithful next. There we go. So this one here is the faithful picture style. There we go. And we'll bring that up full screen first. And this is supposed to be as faithful colours as you can get. It's probably fairly close to what the scene looks like. The actual red on the stapler, the yellows on the What the Ducks, blacks and whites. It's gone a little bit duller on the white What the Duck here. Remember, the contrast levels are changing. Green looks fairly well represented. It was probably a little more accurate on the landscape picture style, and we see a big change as always in this orange flower as we run through. So we'll compare that now to the standard picture style side by side. And the orange flower tends to have a little bit more punch. It's not massive, not a huge change, and it has a little bit more pop in the blue torch there and a bit of a deeper red. Now again, which one you prefer, it depends on your preference. It depends on how you shoot, whether you're shooting RAW or JPEG. Picture styles don't really matter if you're shooting RAW, especially when you're using software like Lightroom, because generally it doesn't interpret those picture styles like Canon's built-in software does anyway, so it doesn't matter. You can build profiles to make it do so, but something that I've never done. So that's the neutral picture style, and then we'll go on to monochrome or black and white. It's a handy picture style to use. This is probably one of the picture styles I use more than any of the other ones. Okay, I shoot on standard all the time. We'll have a look on mono, and this is just in camera mono, black and white. Okay, now one thing you're going to notice when you shoot black and white is it doesn't always work for certain colour palettes, or depending on or certain colours that you have in a scene together. Because I mean, this orange and yellow flower here being represented, it's not great in black and white really. When it's against these other flowers here, you start to get really dark tones with deep blue colours and reds. Now things can kind of start to get lost on this black cloth here, so it might not be something that I would really shoot black and white, because you're going to have a really big contrast range when you've got a scene full of black stuff and then white stuff as well. And if you've got something which is black like the What the Duck here, and maybe say for example if you had a black little camera here and a darker strap, you start really to lose the detail and the separation that you get there. But this is just to show you what the camera does with black and white straight out of camera. Like I say, it's handy to switch to this to give yourself an idea of whether something will work in black and white. This for me doesn't work in black and white, but it's just to show this picture style there. Now there are some other picture styles that you may well have noticed called user defined. Now I have a custom one on the 500D. It isn't in this selection by the way, because I did that for video, but the user defined ones, is 3 of them, and they're all standard picture style. They're exactly the same as the standard picture style, as you can see there. Okay, so there's no difference. They are just all user defined standard. You can change those levels and customize them. You can build custom picture style profiles using the picture style editor that came with the Canon software. It's a little clunky to use, so I've not really bothered doing any kind of a tutorial on that. And if you're shooting RAW, not a whole lot of point. If you're shooting a lot of video, maybe you might want to build yourself a picture style so you get the most out of that video file, for colour correction in post-production, for example. But like I say, that one user-defined 1, 2 and 3 are all same as the standard picture style. So that's just a quick look at the picture styles for the 500D. We'll finish with the standard picture style, which is the one that I use. Again, you shoot how you like. Use the picture styles. If you shoot JPEG and you like the look of the landscape picture style, then go for it. Shoot with that. That's no problem at all. If you want to use the portrait one for shooting portraits, that's perfectly fine. If you're shooting RAW, might not be a whole lot of point of using them unless you're using Canon's own software that came with the cameras. If you're using Lightroom, Photoshop and Bridge, they don't really understand those picture styles fully anyway. It just brings it in on a default Lightroom or Photoshop profile. You can build other profiles, of course, so I generally just stick with the standard picture style. Another reason why I do that is so I can actually stick with one kind of picture style, so I get to know what the previews look like on the screen. I get used to the colours, how they represent and the contrast, and it gives me an idea of how it will look once I've finally worked on that image. But you know, there's never any one rule for this game. You can use these picture styles or not use them as you wish. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thank you very much for watching. In the next video coming up, we're going to have a look at the metering modes of the camera, and we'll run through those modes and show you what they do to the image in terms of how the meter reads the scene and exposes before we go out into the field shooting portraits and some other work with the 500D. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video.